Hello and welcome to Talking Bottom. I'm Ange Pearson.
I'm Paul Tanter.
And I'm Matt Brooks.
And this week we are continuing with our series, The Many Faces of Rik Mayall. And we could not do this series without touching upon his final TV appearance. Like, the character that we have all been left with in terms of his TV work is, of course, Greg Davies' dad in Man Down. The character is either Dan's dad or Richard Davies. The role that he embodies in this show, I presume everyone listening has watched Man Down. If they haven't, you really should go, and don't just watch Rick's bits. I know when it first came out, I watched some of Rick's bits in it because I was like, what is this? But I've watched all 4 series of Man Down now, and I do love it.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
Well, I will say, right, so I've watched most of each episode fully, but not entirely, but I have watched Rick's bits.
Okay.
And I would say, do sit down and watch the entire show if you can, but if you can't, do watch Rick's bits.
Oh, at the very least.
Do watch all of the episodes through completely if you can, but if you can't, if you're pushed for time, or you just want to be a Rick completist, just watch Rick's bits in them. They are fantastic.
Well, what I would say is definitely watch series 1, and then you absolutely have to watch the Christmas episode, which is the sort of opener of series 2, when Rick had sadly passed. So series 1, Rick's in all of it. He plays his dad. I should give you a bit of an introduction to Dan's dad. I mean, the very first time you see him on screen, he's wearing a bear costume and he's surprising Greg in the back of his car and he attacks him. Now, when I first watched this, it was a little bit similar to that Dangerous Brothers thing of like, God, this is so in your face. What the hell? You know, he's like jumping on Greg, and there's so much slapstick and violence that is in that even 2-minute setup.
Isn't it interesting how he's kind of bullying his son?
Yes.
But it's lovable and charming in a way.
It's with so much love underneath it.
It's
But
done from a place of affection.
it's like he is a bully and he is a psycho. But what he is a prankster, right? So Greg Davies, when you've heard him talk about Greg wrote and starred in Man Down. It's very much autobiographical for Greg in many ways, not completely, of course, but his own dad, who was Bob Davies, was someone who was a real practical joker, and he loved to be constantly winding Greg up. So that's the real world inspiration for when Greg sat down to write a sitcom. He thought, right, well, I need a dad that's going to be completely on the wind up, but of course exaggerated version of, and he said he was thinking of Rik Mayall, of course, as the dream casting, even when he was writing it.
He mentioned the Rick Fest, he's probably mentioned it in other things as well, yes, as you say, that was the dream casting, but he never thought he'd get Rik Mayall. He'd cast someone else.
Yeah.
And then found out Rick would be up for doing it, so fired the other guy.
Had to, of course, had to.
Yeah, the story goes that when they done the pilot and it got picked up, he then phones up Rick saying, and he's like, what do you want, David? And he phones him up. It's like, oh, I've just been commissioned for a whole series of Man Down. And he responds with something like, what the fuck would I care about that?
Yeah.
Well, because I want you to play the dad. In that case, congratulations.
Yeah, exactly. So much fun. The camaraderie between those two is very clear on screen, isn't it? But to know, obviously, over years, I think Greg had been told, you look just like Rik Mayall.
They mention it in the We Are Clang a lot, didn't they? You look like a young, fat...
Tall.
Rik Mayall.
I can only assume, I don't know who that other actor was who got cast as Greg Davies' dad, but I really hope that when he got the call being told, look, actually, even though we've offered you the job, you're not getting it now, I hope it went something like this. Well, who have you replaced me with? Who? All right, okay, I understand.
Exactly. How could you not? And I've said this a lot, and I'm so glad that Rick got to do this as his sort of final it is his final sitcom. It was written for him. This part, is absolutely Rick through and through. The violence that you get in those sketches, but also there's this undercurrent of love. It's like it's kind of using modern terms, but his love language is to terrorize. Yeah. Dan Davies, obviously the character is Dan, not Greg, but it's very, very much so that he's, Dan Davies is in Arrested Development, in a similar sort of, if you want to boil down into maybe Greg's influences, he clearly was a Young Ones fan growing up, and that's why he had adoration for Rick. And he has used the slapstick element to the nth degree. If you watch Man Down, if you haven't seen all of it beyond Rick's bits, the amount of times Greg gets attacked by an animal in this show, to real extremes of violence and injury.
The seagulls are really good.
Staggering.
True, but I've got to say, having from the episodes of Man Down that I've watched, Rick's moments are the energy. They're the best bits, but also, and I'm sure Greg Davies would agree with that as well. Yeah. But they are the energetic peaks of the episode, aren't they? Once the moment he's on. in terms of his performance, and also it's really well directed as well, in terms of the camera work, the music choices that they use, and just the performances from him. Greg's performance ramps up as well a lot of the time. Watching them playing swing ball together and stuff.
He's got to match that energy, hasn't he? And the direction, you mentioned the swing ball one, I absolutely love that, because there's a little, it's like a cowboy western-esque little sting that comes in at the very beginning.
It's from The Good, the Bad and the Ugly.
And then it develops into that. There's like at the beginning when he first says, Daniel, let's play swing ball. Let's have some memories, and there's this little stinger, like, and you know exactly that he's planning, that he's up to something. And Greg knows as well, Dan knows. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to have another thing happen. And then the way
you're channeling Greg really well there.
It's so much fun watching what he's going to do to him. But when I first watched this particular scene, I have to say, when the rabbit, gets pummeled against the wall by the bracket, and then the darkness that has like Rick's laughing, and then the neighbours are involved in this jape.
The psychopathy from him there, and the duplicitousness with it. He's charming but lies convincingly, laughing a lot. The kid goes, "The bird was already dead. I forgot to feed him," and he's laughing.
It's a rabbit. It's a rabbit, and he's like,
"No, it was a bird."
No, it's a rabbit in that one. Yeah, it's like he starved to death. We forgot to feed him, and they're laughing, and the next door neighbour's dad's in on it, and they're all just like, and Greg wets himself, or Dan wets himself, and they're all like, "Oh, you're just a stupid little girl," the way Rick does. And when I first watched it, I was like, fuck me, is this too far? But actually on the rewatch, it's so joyful. And apparently Rick did actually have some input in ramping up these ideas. I think, in a similar way that we talked about before, he'd like to take things, exaggerate them. What's the worst thing we can possibly do? And Rick was up for a lot of his own stunts as well, I've read.
Was this not like, you would have thought this would be a toned down Rick, because it's near the end of his life?
Well, at the time he was 50. Well, it was 2013.
It's worth noting. He's only 10 years older than Greg Davies.
Yes,
why he grew the beard to age him up a bit more.
Yeah, they had to, didn't they? They had to age him.
I will say that usually, right, and I'm not doubting that Rick did a lot of his own stuff. But if there's a shot on TV where someone's throwing themselves over a car, for example, and you don't see their face, it's a stuntman.
No, you can tell on the cuts where it isn't Rick. Obviously, the bit where he gets thrown into the bins is not Rick. Yeah. But when he leaps into the air and he ends up on the bonnet, I'm convinced that is Rick, 'cause it's still his hair, and it's still very much his, him in the bear suit. So I think he did propel himself at Greg and get involved in all of those physical slapstick things. And I think Rick had said, no, I want to do this. This is why I've signed up to this show. Yeah. This is what I want to do. He was liking the violence. Of course he was, because it's what he'd done with Aid his entire career.
Like, I really love the physical aspects of what Greg Davies had him doing in that. But one of my favourite bits of Rick in this, it's just him being this sort of wonderful sort of, it's Rick when he's raised an eyebrow and he's slightly charming, and it's when he's dressed as sort of a Punch and Judy. He's got a punch doll on his hand. Greg is asleep in bed. If you wanted to prank someone who's sleeping, the first thing they know about it is when you hit the klaxon, right? Yeah. They don't know what you've been doing before then. Yet Rick has this wonderful conversation with the punch doll where he's quoting Shakespeare and all this kind of thing. Yeah. And he's not doing that for Greg. That's not part of his prank. That's just him doing his thing.
Enjoying the build-up, isn't it?
Some of the scenes are shot like a horror movie, aren't they? With just creeping around in the background.
It's very, very well done, because of course the other thing is that, he might have had the neighbours complicit in one of these pranks, and but there's a moment where the cleaner gets injured, of course, and then the mum. What's really interesting is, as soon as the mum ever walks in, Rick, as the Dan's dad, just completely changes and goes back to, he's like, "Oh, Daniel, what on earth have you done?" And the best one of that is probably when he has the Christmas tree over, but there's so many of them. But it's just he's been like miming out banging the mum against the wall in the suit, in the tux, and then she comes in, he's just like, don't know what his problem is, from and it's like the mum completely believes that the dad isn't doing any of this. So it is actually like,
gaslighting.
He is. And that's what an abuser would do. Not to get too dark, but it's that sort of switching when someone else comes in the room, but only ever the mum, which is interesting to see that sort of father-son dynamic play out in this show, isn't it? I think at the heart of it, you've got Greg. He's having this midlife crisis, and he's lost his girlfriend's left him because he's such he's in his 40s.
He's such a man-child.
Exactly. that is at the heart of it. You've got obviously Brian and Joe as the two chaotic, dysfunctional friends as well, which are brilliantly played by Mike Wozniak and Rosen Connerty. But Rick shines in this as the thing that you want to go back to watch for more. And it was that jester scene that's in episode 2 that won me over completely when I went back for the sort of, I got the DVD
because he's only in episode 1 for that bear scene, isn't he? And
pretty much
on the rewatch for this, I remember getting to at the very end of episode 1, Greg is having a moment with Roisin Connerty, and I'm thinking, Rick needs to appear and do something. That their moment needs to be disrupted by Rick, and they didn't have it. So I was glad that he featured more in the episodes as the series went on.
Yeah, what's so sad, obviously, very, very sad that Rick died, full stop. But the plan was to use Rick a lot more in series 2. And it had been written, I'd love to see those scripts.
That's a shame,
It had been written, but Greg had to hastily rewrite. And of course, just deeply, deeply sad because, I mean, we're moving on to sort of the end of it yet, but we don't need to do that. But it's so sad to know that there would have been so much more of that chemistry on screen between the two of them. I mean, that story that Greg tells about when the first day of shooting, like Rick embraced him in a hug and whispered in his ear, and that, I mean, for Greg, that, I mean, he said, that was just dream come true, like territory, and every one of us can say, my God, imagine if you'd written that and then Rick did that, and you became kind of pals. And I also loved him revealing that there's that wonderful shot of them laughing that was taken by a photographer on set.
No, there was a paparazzi somewhere. It wasn't even someone officially there, and Rick
not
spotted
candid.
him.
It's not candid. It is. They posed.
Do you want to say what the line was? Rick whispers into Greg's ear, like, there's a photographer over there, put your arm around me as if we like each other.
Yeah. And then they're doing that wonderful laugh, aren't they? So I think loads of people have been like, oh, what wonderful fun times they were having together on set. And then that was posed. I love that. And I love it was Rick's idea.
Do you think, the father and son dynamic, it's kind of switched? Like, in a lot of ways, Rick's character's the child and Greg's the responsible one, which having a go at him.
Is incredible when you think how dysfunctional Greg as Dan is. He's not an adult, is he? But when he's with his dad, suddenly the dad plays that role of like he's on the wind up. It's almost like a brother, isn't it?
In every episode he does something. He pranks Dan / Greg in some way. Sometimes it's just verbal, like saying he's got a micro penis. Sometimes it's physical, such as encouraging a horse to bite his nipples. One of my favorite ones is literally like having laughed in his son's face at the notion that he would be going running, is to waterboard him at 2:30 in the morning, which is 2.5 hours before he planned to get up, but just to say, I thought you wanted time to stretch. But in every episode he does all of these ostensibly psychopathic, nasty things. Yet there's one episode, it's the same episode where he does the waterboarding, that the relationship takes on a new meaning, and it's not, and now it's not just he's bullying his son the whole time. And that's the episode, the waterboarding one, which ends with Dan comes home, Rick is in his bed, and Dan gets in and Rick spoons him, and you're waiting for the part where something's going to happen. He's about to shit the bed or do something, and it just ends with them having a hug.
It's a tender moment, isn't it? Yeah, and it is that they do love each other, but no one winds you up like your own family, right? And I love that the very opening one where it's the bet. Greg is just been left by Naomi, gets in the car and he's like, I'm normal. I am normal to himself, doesn't have any idea that his dad's in the back of the car. And then that bear scene happens and it's absolutely chaotic. And then the end of that scene is, this is not normal, and it is just your family are who you can be absolutely ridiculous with, can't you? You have these in-jokes, you have these stupid things that you do with each other that you'd never do with anyone else watching. And that's what I love about Greg Davies' stuff. He talks about his stand-up all the time, about his family, and reveals all of their little in-jokes. And he's a wind-up merchant as well, isn't he, Greg? Like, you can tell when he talks about him and his sister and his mum and his dad, they were all, and that's what's so lovely is like when someone uses their own inspiration in comedic writing, but we can all relate to it, and that's when it works. So I do think, do watch the rest of Man Down if you haven't, because it does develop. It's definitely missing something once Rick's gone. Of course it is. But I do love that Greg said, obviously in the devastation of it all, there was never a moment where he considered just recasting for his dad. Never a moment. Yeah. It was that they're going to have to figure out a way to write this and get a different character in.
What a poison chalice that would have been to have taken on. And with that, I think it's time for a word from our sponsors.
Wherever you see this mark, minced beef will be free of offal, include only beef from regular cuts, and come only from prime cattle under 30 months old. Now minced beef has the mark of approval, isn't it time you put it on your menu?
I don't even like mince.
What do you think was the time in the characters' lives where Greg or Daniel started to become bigger physically than the dad? Because it's
Probably
so
about age 3 or 4.
Yeah, they do talk about him as a toddler, don't they? And how he had, obviously, your dad thought your hormones were all wrong and all that kind of stuff. And that's just Greg through and through, isn't it? I mean, he's such a tall man next to. I mean, Rick wasn't a short man.
The performance is still so scared of his dad, despite the fact he towers over him.
Yeah.
And I think Rick was even quoted as saying he couldn't believe this sort of giant was so gentle, really, off screen. Greg is a very, very tall, imposing figure, isn't he? But he's actually very, very gentle.
I took the job just so I could bully Greg Davies.
Yes, yeah, he did. In an interview, I think it was either with Channel 4 or British Comedy Guide at the time when the first series was coming out. It's sort of like, I couldn't wait to, smash in Greg Davies' face kind of thing. Which is, that's why you would take on the job, I guess. Rick was excited by it, which is what's, again, lovely about it. He was excited to be involved in the project. He said, what a compliment. He said he liked Greg Davies' writing. But of course, Rick influenced Greg Davies' writing, so it's just a really perfect thing that got to happen before we did lose Rick far too soon. No one could have predicted it was going to happen. They had the second series written. We should probably talk a little bit about the moments, when they have obviously got to deal with when Rick had died and the tenderness in which they do that, but perfectly well written into having massive laughs as well. So for anyone who hasn't watched it, obviously Rick died between series 1 and what was planned to be series 2. Series 2 had to be hastily rewritten, so what I think Channel 4 did was say, right, we'll have a Christmas special in 2014 and then series 2 will then be 2015, whereas I think it probably would have been sooner that you'd had series 2 otherwise. And the Christmas special, for anyone who doesn't know how it opens very much with he's died. There's a close-up on his picture on the mantelpiece. It's a Christmas episode, so the tree's there, and they're going for the will reading. It's Christmas Eve. It's set up, comedically enough as it is that they're going to go for this will reading, and Dan doesn't really want to go, and the mum's sort of, just get on with it, Daniel. And they get in there, and it twists to Greg turning up in the room.
Dressed as.
He's basically in a nappy. And he's wearing like teeny boppers with like two dicks coming out of his coming out of them, teeny boppers.
So, and because they're teeny boppers, the dicks are like jiggling around.
They're just like two little pink dicks. And it's that these are the express these express wishes of the deceased. And it's obviously brilliant juxtaposition.
And Greg's mum is sort of dressed up a bit like a dolly bird, isn't she?
She comes in almost like, I guess, like a flapper, or she's in like this wonderful sort of like
This was the dad's last wishes.
Yeah. Yes. Make them... So, but while the will is read, this is how he said they have to be dressed, because they haven't turned up in that. That was sprung upon them, I presume, when they arrived at the sisters. So Greg comes in, he's just like, this is ridiculous. And then you think, it can't get much more awful than this for Greg, can it? Or Dan? Well, I mean, I laughed so much when it's read out what he's leaving in his final kind of parting words for his wife Polly, which is
well, he leaves everything to the wife, doesn't he? Apart from the flat which Greg Davies gets, which Dan gets, but it's being looked after by his aunt. And he says in this will, "You're the weakest of all the Daniels. Daniel Radcliffe could overpower you."
Oh yeah, no, that's brilliant. He's sort of like Daniel Craig and whatever, and he's like, "You're the weakest of all the Daniels." But no. So there's the bit where he says that he wants his wife to have moved on and find a man of sufficient size and girth, basically, that can give you cream like the pussycat you are, and all that kind of stuff. And it's just so good because you've got Greg reacting to this. The mum, bless her, is always plays it. She's so she does it so well. She's always quite innocent with her reactions to all of these pervy things. I do like cream.
Yeah, because they're used to it, I suppose.
They did this thing where he's the lawyer is reading blah blah blah. I'll always remember blah, and it fades out and it comes back in. And when it fades back in, she's got a kind of wistful look on her face, like she's looking at the ceiling. Greg's looking disgusted, and it comes back in with the lawyer going, "Even though it hurt me and it smelled for ages afterwards, I'm glad we did it," or something like that.
We both agreed it was worth it. And it is just that. What is your nightmare of a will reading as a son hearing his parents sexual relations being laid out? But yeah, just brilliant writing from Greg, and so much laughter, even though you've got the sadness that Rick's no longer in it, basically. And then it obviously moves into the plot, and then it ends with a lovely little sting of him knocking the Christmas tree over again because a dog runs into the room, and then you have Rick's the character's photo on the mantelpiece, and Greg just kind of gives it a look. He's grinning, and then it comes up with this lovely to two very funny dads, and it's Rik Mayall and also Greg's own dad, who died just I think 2 months after Rick did.
Yeah.
Must have been, I mean, obviously it was a tough year for Greg and everyone, but like really, really, really lovely and poignant, but handled in such a sweet way that I think it was great that you could still have loads of big laughs into that first episode. And then I have to admit, I found it really hard to bring myself to watch series 2 to 4 for a long time.
I mean, there's good bits in them, and a notable link with Rick in episode 6 of series 2. Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker, appears. He's only in one scene, but he appeared in this scene as a sort of tribute to Rik Mayall. We've talked before about this.
He fell off the treadmill, right?
He was training. Yeah. I think he was getting back in shape, possibly for Star Wars.
Last Jedi.
And he was watching Bottom, and he saw the scene where Rick gets his crotch set on fire by Eddie when he's trying to look through his keyhole, and he apparently fell off his treadmill and hurt his leg. And from that, he became a big Rik Mayall fan. And so he sort of said, he's publicly said this, he's been in interviews and he tweeted this, that he did his Man Down appearance as like a tribute to Rik Mayall.
That's really lovely. I mean, I think they did get, I mean, Tony Robertson eventually ends up coming in as the sort of, the wicked stepdad, even though they don't actually get married, but he fills a dynamic that's very different to what Rick had when it's him and Greg. But he fills that sort of, he hates Dan Davis. Again, it's only really Dan who realizes what a sort of nasty kind of guy this is in front of the mother. He's very much like switches on this act and all that. So they kind of found a way of finding the dynamic, but it's never the same.
The love's not there.
Exactly. The first series is absolutely brilliant. I'm so glad that we do have it. It feels like for Rick, for his final characters, obviously we're talking about the many faces of Rik Mayall and all the wild facial hair that you've got in Richard Davis, his physicality in the show, like we haven't really touched upon when he's acting out, like that build up in that scene so good when he's sat on the car looking wistfully at this wall and he talks about this romantic time from his teen. It's a big long story about how he'd wooed this girl over years, and the parents didn't approve, and so he had to just come every night to blow a kiss at the window.
And he does it really suavely and smoothly, doesn't he? And it seems so sincere until and he just gives it a turn. Eventually, I fucked her against that wall over there, and then goes into the and that's just proper Rick,
It's full on Rick. I mean, he was what, sort of 52, 53 probably.
Right.
No, if he passed it 56 and this was 2013, then actually it's like him 55, right? So it's incredible because it's still so fun. I think I've touched upon sometimes when you watch Adonis Knut trying to like come on to people and all that kind of thing, it can feel that little bit like it doesn't quite play in the comedic way that it did when Rick was in his youth. But I do think these scenes, because he's now into the dirty old man territory, with the bedraggled hair and the beard, and like Rick sells everything he ever does, of course he does, it is really fucking funny to see him winding Greg up, winding up Dan, because he's doing it to wind Dan up, isn't he? He's not vile in any other scene. He's actually a really sweet, loving, tender kind of father.
I think the emotional stuntedness of Dan is completely because of the dad.
Yes, that's it. I wanted to talk a little bit about, I mean, I know I'm always banging on about Steptoe and Son, and we've talked about how that influenced Rick and A's writing, and of course, that push-pull of a relationship between father and son is there in Man Down. I wouldn't say it's in any way exactly a carbon copy in any way, shape or form, but of course Greg was influenced by Rick and A's writing, and it kind of goes cyclical. We've talked about this, haven't we? There's generations of comedy and one influences the other, and it's relatability never changes when you've got family dynamic, right? So there was one scene where he's put the seagull in the car, in the box, like Dan's checked the entire car all over, and he's like, what's he done here? I know he's booby trapped it, isn't he? And like you've just got him looking out the window, Rick, and then as soon as this seagull attacks him immediately. It's horrific, that scene. Like if you have a phobia of birds, my god,
it goes on too long. It's like the Family Guy thing. It's just too long, it's not funny anymore, but it becomes funny again.
Yeah, it is like that. And the puppet is clearly like it's a fake bird puppet, so the beak's kind of bending all over the place, and it's very, very funny. But what struck me was like as Rick's he's doubled over laughing at his son and the thing. That was to me a little bit Harold and Albert, in that Albert would often have a little sly smile whenever Harold, got either won over by one of his little ploys, or he'd be like, I'm winning this, and he'd betray a little smile or whatever to the camera, and then once Harold's back in the room, he kind of switches back to his way of like winding him up, or he'd always spoil things for him in front of women, or when he's trying to be professional. Those kind of things are definitely there in Man Down. It's that sabotage. It's done with, I think, just that feeling of like you want to wind someone up, and what's the best way you can wind them up? Is when they're in front of people they're not meant to be betrayed in front of.
I know one of the best ways you can wind someone up, and it's what he does in The Man Down. You sneak into their flat and you take a shit in their toilet, and then when they complain, you hit them with a line. It was something like, "I can't do a shit like this at home. I had a rack of lamb yesterday. You said yourself it smells horrendous."
Yeah, your mother can't smell this.
Yeah.
It's that, isn't it? It's that, I can't let your mother smell this, it's family dynamic, isn't it? And it's like, I think Greg's writing in Man Down shines. It isn't just Greg who wrote Man Down. I don't think over the course of the entire series he definitely had extra writers come on board for certain episodes. He writes a lot with Barry Castanola, doesn't he? And there's quite a few names in the credits, I think, over the time.
Okay.
But that first series, I do feel, is Greg through and through. And apparently it did drive Greg quite mad, like writing on his own, which I wonder is why he brought other people in. He talks about it. I don't know if you've seen you probably haven't. You haven't got the DVD. There's a behind the scenes on the DVD. And Greg just talks. He's getting makeup on or whatever, and he's just like, "Oh, the writing, for this, I drove myself mad." At one point, I dropped literally a drop of water from a boiling hot kettle, like landed on me, on my trousers, and in a manic moment, it's like, "Oh, that's how it's going to be, is it?" I said to no one. And I just poured the entire boiling water of kettle on the floor in his kitchen as a way to just like express his frustration. And he's like, "Yeah, I was going mad. Like, if anyone was watching me while I was writing Man Down, you would have had me institutionalized," which is really, I mean, if you ever try and write something on your own, like you do drive yourself a bit mad. I think I've never tried to write an entire series of a sitcom, but even just trying to like tweak sketches and stuff, like you do go a bit mad. So I love that. I love that window into Greg's psyche.
Is there any Rik Mayall on the behind the scenes?
There is, yeah. There's a lot of, like, I mean, you often see these kind of things with Rick on behind the scenes things where people put a camera in his face and he either tells them to fuck off or he'll be, sort of saying, "I'm Rik Mayall. Hi. Yes, of course it's great. Rik Mayall's in it." That sort of thing. He's playing up to the camera, and apparently had a lot of fun on set. Everyone loved him. Of course they did with Rick. Everyone was in awe, and I think Greg himself said, he walked around like a king on set because he was so adored, and he just had a lot of fun with peeps.
We know Richie's father was a German spy of some kind who he never ever met. Do you think that he would have had a kind of similar father-son relationship with a dad like this, if in another world or something? How would Richie have had a dad in the sitcom?
I think if Richie's dad had been present, it would have been like the relationship between the guy with glasses in the in-betweeners and his dad, in that he leaves and occasionally he visits him and the dad just goes, "Oh, are you still a virgin, are you? Oh, okay."
Oh yeah, maybe. I was thinking maybe like someone like Mr. Harrison being his dad.
Oh, what, like you go round and he's like, "What do you fucking want?
Yeah.
There's a race on. Well, look, why don't you make yourself useful and go and get me some tins from the office?"
Richie would have desperately been wanting affection or any kind of, approval, as happens in a lot of family relationships, I guess. And he'd never have got it from whoever his dad was, of course. I mean, his dad fucked off. But, I mean, to what we've been asking over the series is, do you think Richie would have got on well with Richard Davies, Dan's dad? Do you think they would have got on?
I think they were in such different universes. It's difficult to see them interacting in the same world. Dan's dad feels like he's part of pretty much our real world, whereas Richie can exist in the same universe as the Dangerous Brothers and other characters. I don't know. Would they get on? I think Dan's dad would try and wind him up as well, and it would work.
Yes, yeah, true. I think there's no way that Dan's dad wouldn't just want to pick on Richie in a similar kind of way. But then again, he reserves it for his only son. So I guess you'd have to ask, well, what if he was his own father? And then we get way too involved in a question of thinking outside the realms of reality. But yeah, no, I don't think they'd have got on as such. I think I keep saying this. I think just Richie bores everyone he's ever with who isn't part of his universe, and even within his universe. So yeah, in the real world, it's interesting to try and think of Richie and Eddie now, isn't it? Or even in the last, sort of 10, 11 years. They're not of our reality, are they? Okay, and I think it is now time for a quiz. This is, of course, going to be focused around Rik Mayall in Man Down. Hopefully you guys are going to be scrubbed up on some of them. I've tried to make it not too focused on particular things in episodes, just in case you haven't got it fresh in the noggin. What noises / buzzers are you going to have?
You fat prick! Actually, if I can drop the "you," I'll just yell "fat prick."
Okay.
Daniel.
I like that. Okay, question number 1. Rik Mayall wakes up Greg wearing a jester's hat and has a Punch and Judy puppet on his hand. We see this puppet appear in what other scene?
Okay, I don't know. Sorry. Can't remember.
No idea.
No? Oh, well, his dad pranks him by staging being run over in the road.
Oh,
he's got his coat on.
I was going to say that when he's under his fucking coat and he goes, "You fucking run me over."
Yeah, and the puppet just
He's
comes
got
out.
the puppet.
Yeah.
Yes, he does. Yeah, okay. Damn it.
No worries. Okay. When Dan is invited to play swing ball with his dad, What is the name of the rabbit that Greg's made to believe he has killed?
Fat prick. I'm just going to say something like Mr. Flopsy or something. No?
It's not that.
You're Mr. Diddles.
No, you can't. I mean, you've both got the Mr. part of it, but it's Mr. Mimples.
Mimples.
Mr. Mimples.
Sounds a bit like Diddles. Get half a point.
Well, I mean, you both got Mr. So you'd both have to
do we
share
both,
half a point.
both get half a point?
I mean,
It's the same as getting no points.
yeah. Okay, if you want to both be on a half, we can
No,
be for
no,
Mr.
no,
but I think
I'd
it's
rather
better to just be zero.
I'd rather we both got nothing.
Right, question number 3, everything to play for. Greg Davies described the moments on set with Rik Mayall that stayed with him in several interviews. What word did Greg say in Rick's ear? I think that was Paul.
Comrade.
That's right. How many years, months, and weeks older than
Fat
Greg
prick.
was Rick?
Okay, I'm going to say 10 years, 6 months, and 2 weeks.
Incorrect.
I'm going to go 10 years,
Higher or lower?
5 months, and 1 week.
Well, I mean, you are closer, Matt. I just wanted to say, because it is interesting how close they were. So 10 years, 2 months, and 1 week.
Okay.
Rick was born on the 7th of March 1958, and Greg was born on the 14th of May 1968, which is staggering, isn't it? It's only 10 years,
Isn't it?
give or take. So, yeah. So, I mean, you didn't get it exactly right there. Are you
Half a
happy
point.
to even that out there? I'll do a half a point because you got 1 week, actually. Okay. So that's 1 to 1.5. I should write this down.
Yeah.
I haven't got anything to write it down on. That's the problem. What delicious meal does Dan decide to cook for Naomi in order to win her back?
Fat prick. Mince.
Correct. I don't even like
Lots
mince.
of mince. Yeah.
Absolutely love that scene. Okay, so that is now 2 to Paul and half to Matt. In the very first scene we meet Rik Mayall in, what animal outfit is he wearing? Let's love.
It's a bear.
It's a bear. That's correct. Okay, so that's 1.5 to Matt and 2 to Paul. Rick reportedly didn't like being referred to as Dad on set. What did he insist cast and crew called him?
Fat prick. Doctor the Rik Mayall.
Was it Fat Prick?
That's incorrect.
No? Okay.
Sir?
No, this is reportedly the daddy.
Okay.
So rather than just dad,
CD.
the daddy. What were this is a bit of a sad one. What were Rick's final lines of dialogue in Man Down? Many fans read them as very poignant in hindsight.
I love you?
No,
No, that wasn't a question. Answer. I was just saying how I felt.
because I love you. Well, it's not the answer on my card or how I feel.
I wouldn't be able to hazard a guess.
Okay, yeah, no, I wanted to cram this in earlier, so I thought I'd just flag it because it is really deeply poignant when you deeply. So it's "You'll thank me one day. I'm your father. It's what we do."
Okay.
And it's very sweet, I thought. I don't end completely on downers with this, but question number 9, so we're on 2 to 1.5 still.
Yep.
Everything to play for. In the Christmas special in 2014, the will reading happens. Richard Davies stipulates that Dan has to wear what?
Fat prick, a nappy, and penises on dealy boppers on his head.
Very well listened earlier. I absolutely love that.
Well, and I've seen that scene.
Yeah, well, of course. But it was talked about earlier. That's now 3 to you, Paul, 1.5 to Matt. Come on, this is the final question. So
it's
actually,
impossible for me to
Paul's
win.
run away with it. But
We're not run away.
I've got a
with it,
tiebreaker one as well for fun. But number 10, what was the key attribute Richard Davies insisted his wife Polly find in a new man? Go on.
girth.
Yeah.
And to fill him up with cream.
I mean, it's a man with real girth.
Real
Make you
girth.
cream like the cat you are, or something.
Yeah,
okay.
it's wonderful.
There you go. I
But
think
yeah,
Matt-
man with real girth. So that was your point, Matt. But I'm afraid Paul
2.5
steals it.
to 3.
Yeah. Do you want the tiebreaker just
Go
for
on,
fun?
just for fun.
How much taller than Rick was Greg Davies?
Fat prick, a foot.
No, you said how much taller was Rick than Greg Davies?
Oh, okay.
Taller than Rick is what I said.
Fat prick, a foot.
What's a foot in inches?
12 inches.
Right, no.
10 inches?
No, you are closer though. So Rick was 6 foot and Greg is 6'8".
Okay, 8 inches.
According to, the internet. Haven't actually had the
Was there,
delight of measuring either of them.
was there anything else that had 8 inches difference between the two of them?
Well, there's a question. We know Rick's cock was 3 foot, don't we?
3
So
foot or 2 foot, depending on which story he was telling.
maybe one day we'll meet Greg and he'll allow us to measure.
Is this the last episode?
Well, we've gone over all of Rick's iconic characters, but we haven't been able to sort of individually talk about some of the voice work he did over the years. So we're going to round off this series by talking about, Grim Tales, The Last Hurrah, and miscellaneous. Obviously,
Yeah.
George's Marvelous Medicine Krakenori, all of the things that Rik did. Incredible voice work over the years. So we're going to be doing that next week, aren't we?
I think all of the best known ones. I know he's done a lot, so there might be one or two ones that people are familiar with. They might go, "Where's this one?" We can't do all of them, but like the ones Andrew just said, all those best known ones. You know, probably Wind in the Willows, his performance as Toad, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's so many that we couldn't pick just the one, so we're just going to try and
Don't
go
Fear
over it.
Death. We should probably
that would have been one of his final things as well. Yeah, exactly. So thank you very much for listening. We hope you've enjoyed it. If you haven't seen all of Rik's work in Man Down, I would definitely recommend that you do look up at least the first series. It's phenomenal.
It's available on channel4.com
Well,
probably.
this is what's difficult.
not.
It's actually just come off streaming. So it was on for a long, long time. So I hope it's going to come back on again. I don't understand why it's come off Channel 4.
Yeah, I had to rewatch it on a dodgy site.
Oh.
Buy the DVD, listeners, if you've still got a DVD player. It's out there, but I'm sure it will come back round. But, you can buy it.
It'll probably crop up on Netflix soon or something.
All of Rik's bits are pretty much up on YouTube if you want to look at them. But that final scene with the will reading isn't, which is really annoying.
Yeah.
So if you like what we do, listener, please check us out on socials. We're at Talking Bottom. You can also email us at leathermafficingparade@gmail.com.
And thank you very much for listening to the series so far. After this, we will obviously have to think about what we'll do pods on next. But it's been great to talk about Rik's characters, hasn't it, so far? It's been really fun. We hope you've enjoyed it too.
Highlight,
Yeah, it's been lovely.
Highlight. And of course, we keep going on about it. We have written a book, Talk Ages, but it is now out, available. Go on the link tree. There'll be a way to buy it. It's getting very good reviews and lots of very funny bottom quote laden references throughout. So have a look at the reviews as well. They're quite funny. And they're not written by us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we haven't done any fake reviews whatsoever, have we?
No.
No, we actually haven't.
No, they've been lovely.
Well, at time of recording, we haven't. I don't know.
And if you enjoyed the book, please drop us a review.
Thank you very much for listening, everyone.
I'm going to say goodbye. Didn't like my goodbye.
Goodbye.